Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all generous patrons who kept us going for over 400 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week is Kyle I. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle.
And of course, we have a sponsor to thank, and I'm talking about Manscaped. Now, Manscaped has several products that we love. The thing that got us into Manscaped is the Manscaped ecosystem, which I don't know how I feel about ecosystems, but the thing that got me into the ecosystem, or maybe it was a gateway of caring about my ballscape, was the ball deodorant. They're sort of like they're sort of the top to bottom care system for not just your balls, but now also your chin. And that's
It
what
also
I'm
makes
holding here.
an interesting point there, too, because like you take a shower, you probably wash your balls, right? Probably. If you're a man if you're a man of class and culture, you know, I'm hoping you wash your balls, right? So when you get out of the shower, though, what do you put on, you know, for the rest of the day? Deodorant, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't want your pits to smell
Get down
throughout
there.
the day. Do you
put some
think
crop preserver
do you
on.
think your nuts smell any better? You know, do you think they're immune from that? No, like it just makes sense that, you know, to have such a, you know, dank, moist crevasse of your body go without any sort of deodorant. So yeah, like that's why the crop preserver can be a bit of a godsend, especially if you're at an event like PAX is coming up or Dragon Con, or you know, if you're going to Evo at some point
Your
in
wedding,
the future,
which is why I used it.
Your wedding,
So
beautiful, or hiking in your bed in one of your groomsmen's case.
Yeah. But also our new favorite, or basically our current favorite product, is the Beard Hedger Pro. And there's several reasons, but one of the main reasons, yeah, we both got it right here.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons is this dial that makes it really easy and quick to adjust on the fly, the guard system, so you can do fine-tuning adjustments and get a clean fade from your sideburns into your hair if you're like me, if you're follically challenged, and you got to keep it short so that it doesn't look like you're a Kramer. You know, or if you want to have a more fine-tuned goatee situation like Simmons is rolling. This also,
I used it today. You know, it took like a minute or less. Just
yeah, it's pretty excellent.
it just works, unlike Starfield.
I actually got this question, and it's weird to get a question sometimes about it because I, of course, am not a barber, so I don't know for sure. But so it was like, oh, how do you do your mustache cleanly with something like that? I was like, oh, well, you use this for the you know, broad strokes, but in the kit they give you some really sharp scissors and a comb, and that way you can get like the short hairs right underneath your nose and like can clean up your lip and stuff like that. The kit itself comes with like a brush and some oils, the beard hedger, of course, a comb, and the scissors, and it's like an all-inclusive package to take care of your face, just the same way that they have like the ultra smooth package. It's all inclusive for taking care of your package. So,
well, ultra smooth is if you want to go for, you know, you want to rock that, you know, that porn star look, you know, like completely, like look like a completely petrified tree, you know.
You want to take a couple of years off your balls, you know, you want to make them look young and fresh.
That's right, because as a mustache will make you look older when you're trying to buy that liquor, you know, when you're underage at the liquor store down at the corner. If you want to like shave a couple of years off, you know, your rapidly approaching middle-aged self, you can get the ultra smooth package and look at least 10 years younger.
You know, sometimes when you get rid of your beard and you're all like, beard, and this, it's just, you know, balzinis. So if you're interested in checking out any of Manscaped's products like the lawnmower or the beard hedger, please head over to manscaped.com. Use our code YoVG, all caps, for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. That's code YoVG, all caps, at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. Your balls will thank you.
Yeah.
I hope you can't hear the dogs howling. Every dog on the street just started howling as I did that. I assume because they love taking care of their balls. I assume. I don't
Well,
know.
how many? Well, hopefully they don't. Hopefully they don't even have balls if they're, doing the right thing, with the pets. But
I don't know. Maybe you want them to be wild and free.
that's dangerous.
Sometimes I sometimes regret taking my dog's balls.
You
I look
shouldn't.
at them like, man, I feel bad, buddy. You're in the prime of your life. You're
You
not out
shouldn't.
there getting
Are
your
you?
fuck
Are
on.
you? You're not breeding, and you're not breeding dogs. You shouldn't feel bad.
Should have. My dog's beautiful.
Get your pets spayed and neutered, people. I remember there was a PSA. Do you remember PSAs on cartoons
Yeah.
way a long time ago? I remember Heathcliff had a had a PSA where Heathcliff was talking about getting your pet spayed and neutered, and I'm like, why is the cat telling me this?
And that was meant for kids. So you like your kids are gonna come to you and be like, Mom, Dad, why are you cutting the nuts off of
Yeah, can we go
dog?
get can we get our dog neutered or what?
See, I'm actually of the personal opinion that we should let dogs just outbreed us and eventually take over the planet and kill us off like a virus. Um, but that's considered extreme. That's considered an extreme way to look at the world. But
I would
I'm
say
just saying,
so.
if they're more successful at it, they want to outbreed
No,
us.
it'll just evolve into that dogs playing poker picture. That's just what it's all going to
Unfortunately,
lead.
yeah.
All roads lead to this den of gambling and debauchery.
But maybe in that world, I'm the one who has somebody cleaning up my shit, and I get to sleep all day.
I could-
Speaking of cleaning up shit, our topic for today is what genres are like a cliff. We had a different name for it, but it's triggering, and we decided to maybe not get
Yeah,
the YouTube
it's
algorithm
kind of
against us.
it's kind of an epiphany I had where it seems like you're just setting yourself up for basically getting laid off nowadays.
Genres doomed to fail.
Yeah, genre's just doomed to fail,
Yeah.
basically. And let me be very specific with this. So this came from the report, basically, that BioWare, I think Edmonton, laid off about 50 people. They cut
Mhm.
ties with a QA studio, uh, a unionized QA studio, which might be the sole reason there. But it was basically, and it sort of led to this sort of thing where it's like, okay, well, if Dragon Age Dreadwolf doesn't fucking hit next year, which is, the rumor is that it's coming out second half next year.
Mhm.
If it doesn't fucking hit, uh, I would assume BioWare's in a lot of trouble because their last two games have been failures. They've basically had to go into sort of restructuring mode, and I feel, because I had friends who were really into BioWare games, and it
Right.
kind of just like the studio just sort of imploded. And again, I would blame personally EA all the way. I gotta blame EA for everything. I'm sure there's more to it and there's more nuance, and there's probably definitely snakes within BioWare, like with Blizzard.
Well,
Um,
I think Andromeda is a Andromeda was a failure, in my opinion, not because of the bugs that happened, but because maybe EA forced BioWare to switch engines,
mhm.
and then
And
they just
there's been
didn't want
some
to rebuild the assets, so they
there's been
limited how
some
many.
pushback on that. Like, some people are claiming that they proposed it, or they were the ones who, but it sounded more like someone up or BioWare probably said, we wanted to use it, like, let's use this engine, which was
Right.
probably more of a, hey, I want to get in good with Papa EA. So
And,
it's like there's a little bit of like back and forth there. My take is that, again, we probably won't know the real answer, but it's probably like EA was basically, because here's the thing. People say like EA never forced it on us. So I'm like, yeah, they never forced you to work overtime either, did they?
right. And I mean Andromeda, especially. So I just went through all the Mass Effect games again, with the Legendary Edition, and I was thinking about hopping into Andromeda, and then like I decided to watch like one kind of overview of how it connected in, because I was like, a question I had is like, how did they keep the story going? And basically they were like, oh, these guys left around Mass Effect 2 to go to the Andromeda galaxy, hence Andromeda, to
Yeah.
like find livable planets and create colonies and stuff. And so that's why there's not that many aliens in it. That's why the technology hasn't advanced beyond, because they're now
Mhm.
600 years in the future because it took them 600 years to get across space or whatever. But then there's only in the entire galaxy 2 other new alien species. And it's right about there where I realized, like, oh, they just didn't want to build new assets. Like they switched engines and they just didn't want to they didn't want to build. From everything I've seen, like the gameplay looks fine. Like it looks like your standard Mass Effect gameplay, and it looks like all the bugs are fixed on it and stuff. And it looks like a pretty game. It's just that compared to the original 3, it seems sparse and dull.
Mm.
Um, and there's like a weird religious undertone apparently with the villains, but I don't know that for sure. I haven't played it yet. Uh, so I sort of feel bad holding up Andromeda as BioWare's fault because you can't really be sure, but I guess it doesn't matter in the industry, right? It doesn't matter whose fault it was a failure.
I
The
think
next
there's multiple things too, because there was plenty of reporting about how they were kind of rushing it,
right.
to get it out within a certain
Mhm.
amount of time and time frame. And BioWare had this kind of problem within their company. It's infamous now in the industry because I think Steph Sterling brought it up. They called it BioWare magic, where in the last few months of development, it'll all come together. Don't worry about it.
Right.
We'll just crunch really hard at the finish line, and it'll all come together.
No,
And
thank you.
that's the BioWare magic. Yeah,
Right.
no.
I Yeah, I don't so I like BioWare games. I liked especially the original Mass Effect games, like the 3 original ones. I don't know if it's the genre that's killing them. And this is sort of what we're getting at is like, are certain genres, the way you put it, like just death sentences? Like, if you're not making something that just drags in money hand over
Yeah.
fist, are you destined to fail? And I don't agree with the premise because I think, especially in BioWare's case,
Mhm.
if Andromeda was good, they would have made money hand over fist. I don't think it's the genre that fucked up. I think it's purely that they made a subpar game.
Well, this kind of also goes a lot with what EA CEO at one point, I think Andrew Wilson had said, where he told someone, if you're not planning microtransactions for a game in today's climate, you're a fucking idiot. I think he might have even used a different
Yeah.
term, um, which to me just says it all. Like there
Mhm.
and they've actually there's been some defense on this thing where like, oh look, the budgets for games is fucking enormous, and you have to make more money than just the initial sales. Like
Right.
that $60-$70 purchase needs to not be the only source of revenue. It has to be earning revenue
For
in
a few years.
addition,
Yeah.
in addition to that, to make it even worth the investment, which to me sounds more like a project management budgeting issue, whatever. And again, I want to also say, like, I'm not saying RPG, like single player RPGs, are like suicide in general or whatever, doomed in general, because first party games obviously exist and are doing quite well,
Right.
obviously, and then obviously the indie scene's doing well. So it's like,
Oh,
yeah,
but if you're a third party, should you be even bothering with that type of
right.
game?
Like
Is that
it's like,
yeah.
okay, if you're a major third party
Mm,
studio under an
mm,
EA, what originally an Activision and Ubisoft, I guess, Embracer Group, THQ Nordic, whatever at this point, or hell, even if you want to go over to Japan a little bit, it's a little bit like it's that they're kind of the anomaly, I feel, but like it feels like if you're making a major single player anything, a single player focused title at a major publisher that's not first party, major third party publisher, it seems like you're setting yourself up to failure at this point.
right.
And it kind of sucks because there's just I don't know, there's no way around it. And the weird sort of thing is that like it's almost like, well, what's the solution? I don't have a solution here. Consolidation, I guess, maybe. I don't know. Um when when
Well,
when you
so
look at like
two things about that. Like, one, I don't actually think that there's necessarily a solution needed because I'm not sure that I agree that, even as a third part, like I think third parties making like a really good CD Project Red making The Witcher, right?
Mhm.
Uh fucking just a dominating franchise. Like The Witcher's
Right.
fucking
That's a
great.
little bit like Larian's situation where it's like they're self-published.
Right. And yeah, that's fair. They don't have to contend with a publisher that has different expectations for them, I guess. Um, the other thing is like whenever somebody does a quote where they're all like, "Oh, the CEO says this," I now, especially nowadays, I think the sheen or the shine has worn off on whether CEOs actually know a single fucking thing about how the products get made. Um,
Right.
it's not like I'm not trying to like do this like fucking anti the man. Like I'm not even saying that. Like however you feel about CEOs being people you should look up to or whatever the fuck. I think that in the last 5 years, especially, but let's say the last 10 years, we have come to realize two things about CEOs in general. Tech CEOs, startup CEOs, often don't know anything about running a business but are really good at selling ideas.
Mhm.
And established CEOs have no idea about good ideas, but are usually pretty good at running a business. So if EA's CEO goes like, well, if you're not planning to have microtransactions, this thing that only existed in the last, I think it was like 5 years of the time that he had said this, if you're not planning to have microtransactions, then you're a fucking idiot. Uh, well, lots of games were huge fucking hits and whole empires had been built without
Mhm.
microtransactions till now. So, also considering the fact that he's the CEO of one of the most ass backwards companies that is struggling in every area except sports, I'd have to say he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. But granted, I'm not a CEO, so I'm not
Well,
trying to.
I think it's ultra shady because like this year they they reorganized their company structure.
Yeah,
So EA Sports is now going to be a separate division of the company, and
right,
EA Games is going to be its own business section. And what this means is that FIFA and Madden, I know they're not called that, no longer contribute and cover any failures from EA Games. So now EA Games has to basically be a success on their own. Anything that's not a sports game, because sports games are only going to go towards funding sports games. They're not going to be responsible for holding up the other section. And
well,
apparently there's also been talks that Apex sales are starting to decline. I'm like, well, yeah, it's been out for fucking years.
right.
Like
I,
at some point it had to.
so, Amazon has that sub company AWS in it. AWS wildly profitable. Amazon overall, not including AWS, not wildly profitable. AWS floated Amazon for fucking years, may still be floating Amazon in terms of profit. Like almost all the profit that Amazon makes
Mhm.
comes from AWS. And at one point, the CEO of AWS, is my understanding, this is secondhand, basically want to do the same thing where they're like, let's split off so that we can kill it basically and aren't responsible for carrying them.
Yeah.
And Bezos basically said, no, you fucking idiot. That's why I have you carrying. Why would EA Sports split off so as to not cover the fall? I think it's actually the other way around, where like game producers don't want the executives that oversee sports to be the same executives that oversee them making their games.
The thing is, though, I don't think you're getting like a different boss from this. This all just sounds like a reason for them to start cutting studios, start shuttering stuff, because now it doesn't look. Now, see the idea here is that okay,
The optimist in me was hoping.
it doesn't. It's not like you're EA Games. How are you doing? Oh well, we're doing great. We sold millions of Maddens, millions of FIFAs, made $1 billion in card packs. Great, cool. Now it's like, okay, now we have a fall guy. It's everyone else not fucking pulling their weight. So when someone
Right.
fucking underperforms, I can gut the studio and it looks like I'm doing something, you know,
Right.
where it's like now I can sort of isolate the problem and get rid of them. And it makes me look good in front of shareholders and everyone else where it's like, yeah, we had this portion of the company that was underperforming, so we're getting rid of them. No more shared umbrella, no more shared pot, with all the revenue coming in from the sports games carrying you guys. Now now you're gonna be on your own kind of thing.
So
So
I still don't think that that means that like certain genres are death knells. What I do think that means though is that you're gonna see way more fracturing in third party developers and publishers. I think you're gonna see
yeah.
like real like I think there's a good chance that you see a lot of these devs who don't want to work on sports games or don't want to make live service games are then going to split off and become independent again,
Yeah.
which I think could be overall good and overall good for the industry.
And the indie scene's kind of killing it lately. Like there, clearly, I mean, you
I
can look
mean,
at Baldur's
definitely in
Gate
terms of
3,
ideas.
sure, but like there's also plenty of other like smaller indie titles being big successes
Right.
and stuff and kind of doing it, kind of killing it, kind of, because less overhead, and here's the thing. I think this is the most probably like maybe one of the biggest outlandish statements, whatever. I think Wall Street, I think companies going public is the worst fucking thing to happen to the video game industry. Was video game companies going public.
There's a whole lot of people who would argue that Wall Street is usually the worst thing that can happen to a company. The worst thing that can happen to an industry is Wall Street because at first a bunch of investor money floods in and it seems like advancements are happening
Yeah.
really fast. And then all those investors want more and more returns on those investment and you get lots and lots of more austerity movements and shit.
I mean, it was kind of like the bag. I mean, for nerds and listening, like in the original Batman Begins, that was the whole thing with Rutger Hauer's character was that um, Thomas Wayne kept Wayne Enterprises a private entity,
Mhm.
and when he died, Rutger Hauer was trying everything he could to make it go public.
Right.
Um, and that was like the whole background story about how he wanted the company to go public so he could make a bunch of fucking money off shareholders immediately.
Right.
Um, so
Yeah, I don't know. Investors like single investors are often not portrayed as bad guys, but pretty much everybody doesn't really look at Wall Street with a kind eye, I guess. Like,
well,
I don't think everybody goes, "Oh, thank God Wall Street's here."
it really sucks how nowadays a game company as a whole can't just we made more money than we spent. Great.
Right,
No, it's did you make more profit this year than last year? And the next year will you make more than this year? And then year after that and the year after that. And like, are you gonna chase the tail of this dragon? Um, that's the problem. You can't, game companies can't just have a year where it's like, well, we're not going to really release anything this year. And then we'll, we'll just kind of like float by with what we had. And then,
unless you're
the next year
Rockstar.
we'll release a big game and it'll make a bunch of money for us. And then well, Rockstar is running a live service game. They're running the live service game
Right.
and they're constantly having, updates to GTA Online come out and still sort of floating Red Dead 2, kind of not so much, but like it still sold like 50 million copies.
So if you're
So
a third-party developer or third-party publisher, you're saying live service is basically the only thing worth putting your money into?
no, it's the only thing they think is worth
Is
putting
worth
their
it.
money into. And I think that's why they're having such of like sort of like the big ones left. It's why they're having so much trouble in a sense. Or
Right.
they will be having trouble. Because I mean like EA again is floated entirely by Madden and FIFA or Soccer Club, whatever the fuck they call it now. Um
Because they don't want to pay
they
FIFA
don't want to pay FIFA
license.
anymore, which fine, whatever, it doesn't matter. But yeah, like they're floated entirely by the fact that there's millions upon millions of people around the world who don't even think twice about buying the next year's version of that game and then feeding more money into the microtransaction, hellhole that it is.
I actually always wonder about this. Like, how often do you think a person buys the new one every year? Because like I used to have this criticism, like, what fucking guy would do that? Like, who would buy every year's Madden or FIFA? But then, like, that's all that's happening with Call of Duty for the last
Mhm.
10 years.
I would argue
Basically.
Call of Duty definitely had more differences year to year than FIFA and Madden do, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, it's the same deal. Like there's millions of
Yeah.
people who just buy COD every year. Like if I really want to bring it up, like again, the best selling game. I'm just gonna give me a minute here. Right? Like the best selling games for last year and this year and for the last 12 months are generally there's at least 2 or 3 CODs.
In there, yeah. I often wonder about like sports games in general do fairly well, and but they're not very expensive to develop in
Mhm.
terms of like assets. I mean, what, every 5-6 years you gotta redo the assets, maybe, or I guess I don't really see a COD is going to have a graphical leap and a style difference generally game to game. Maybe not a graphical leap is fair, but like it's going to
Mhm.
have a different style game to game. There's going to be a different art direction or something like that. With a FIFA or a Madden, it's mostly just going to look to be consistent, I would imagine. Maybe they could change mechanics, maybe they update teams and players and stuff like that. Um, I'm sort of surprised it's not a live services thing where it just gets updated. You pay a subscription, so you always have the
Yeah.
newest players and shit like that.
Yeah, I just trying to like pull up like a single like a 12-month one. But yes, it's like um Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 right now has been one of the highest dollar earner sales of a video game this year.
Insane.
It's been Modern Warfare 2 from last year. It's just how it is especially like in America, like the largest market, right?
Yeah.
That's that that's just the way it goes. Um uh, top selling, it started the year that way too. Like even in January, it was like Modern Warfare was the best selling, best selling game. I'm trying to find like the last 12 months. Uh,
It's all live services games that are the highest sellers, though.
well, I'm talking about like just raw earning money. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
right. Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but so the point I'm getting at here is that there are millions, literally millions of people in the U.S. alone, just the United States of America. They just buy Call of Duty.
Right, and they
Just
buy it
Call of Duty.
every year.
They buy it every year, and it's the only game they buy. That's it. Millions, millions of people like that. And there's millions of people like that for Madden, and there's millions of people like that worldwide for FIFA. They're not even gamers. They don't play other video games. They don't pay attention to anything video game related. They every August, November, whenever FIFA comes out, just go to the store, get the next FIFA or Madden or whatever.
I had a
It's just what
boss.
they do, like their taxes.
I had a boss at a production company that I was working at. Um, his office was huge, and it had like a couch and a big screen TV. And he would do meetings. If he had to have a meeting with you, you'd literally sit on the couch and play FIFA or Madden. And just like talk about whatever you had to do, like whatever your meeting was. If it was a one-on-one or if there was like 5 or 6 people, everybody, you'd just be sitting there playing a sports game. And every year he had the newest version of it. Fucking on a
He just
PS4, now on a PS5, I imagine. But uh
he's just playing, playing Madden or FIFA. That's what he plays. That's what they do.
yeah, and MLB. I actually think he was onto something, because he would say like nothing sort of turns your brain off of like thinking about like the politics of the meeting, or like getting distracted with like being nervous about speaking, than just like having something to focus on. And he's like, so yeah, okay, so the meeting, instead of being an hour long, is 20 minutes, because we're just doing it over FIFA. Like, you're just burning through a meeting playing a round of FIFA. And it's like, there is something to that. I think especially for creative work. I imagine he wasn't doing that with his accountant, but you
Right.
know, but for like creative work, you're writing, you're editing and all that stuff, story
Well,
producing.
here's the real problem with sort of like the sort of like lemmings heading to the ocean that a lot of these third parties are kind of, and some of them are starting to face the music. I think we're really seeing that with Ubisoft, who's basically just like they're canceling projects. Everything's Assassin's Creed. Is that the problem with this whole like, well, everything's live service, like you asked me earlier? Here's the problem with that: the market is oversaturated with
Right.
multiplayer
It's
offerings,
I honestly think
and
multiplayer is starting to downward slope.
right, because we've all got our game. You
Hmm.
know, like it is just as stupid to me to launch a new live service game now as it is like a single player RPG with no microtransactions planned, right?
Yeah.
And because here's my honest feeling is that like everyone's got their multiplayer offering. They're in their thing. The only sort of way in this is that basically when one of them sort of implodes, people will bounce off, and you'll have a large group of people looking to, well, what's going to be my replacement? I.e., this is, I don't know about you, but definitely for me, I was like, yeah, I'm done with COD, right?
Yeah, I'm
COD
burned out
lost
on it.
me, so I'm like, okay, so I went to go look for a new multiplayer experience. Right now, it's Naraka. Lately, so I'm kind of just fine with that. And the thing is, I haven't even like I like if, for a while it was Fortnite. I just kind of went over to Fortnite and playing a little bit of that, learning that, like, and then I'm kind of like a little bit on the rocker right now. And it's like I don't think too much about other multiplayer games. And it's like, oh well, what if we introduce a newbie? I don't care.
Yeah,
Like, really, truly, do not care
just a little
about.
bit done with it for a while.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, every single live service game wants you to invest your time and your money and your effort into it. You know what else is funny and is interesting, and I think a genre is really benefiting from this, and people will like this. I think fighting games right now are benefiting from sort of the implosion of like games like Call of Duty and Blizzard. And you might think, hey, there's no crossover there. Hold up, there. Hold up. Wait a minute. Because we saw Project L at Evo, and it was definitely getting eyeballs of League of Legends players looking at this project and going like, "Oh, well, maybe I'll try this. Oh, I'm kind of interested." Um, so
I had this discussion once with Max, and I think we were even at a Call of Duty tournament when we had this discussion. Because I hadn't really played. This is before he ever was doing
mhm.
his YouTube channel. Um, and he was sort of pitching me on like I should start playing fighting games more often. And I was like, I don't really know. He's like, competition is competition. If you like the competitive aspect of COD, you like the competitive aspect of fighting games, and it's just a different competition. He was like, the reason why it's better, why he said it was better is like it's a 1-to-1, like you can't get screwed over by one of their teammates or by like a sniper or whatever. He's like, it's 1-to-1, it's you versus this other person. And like if you like competition at all, you're gonna get addicted, is how he said, to that,
Mhm.
like, frame by
Yeah.
frame battle. So I do think you're right. I think that competition multiplayer or competitive multiplayer has taken off. Uh and I definitely think the FGC is
Yeah.
going to benefit the
And I
most
and I
from it.
think Street Fighter 6 is a right game at the right place at the right time,
Yeah.
because there definitely was an implosion of multiple other kind of multiplayer offerings. And here comes Street Fighter 6. Street Fighter 6 fucking nails what it needs to nail. It nails single player, it nails competitive. It has that whole battle hub. It has like a wildly creative shit you can do, with your character creator, all that shit. It has all this crazy shit in the game, and it's competitive, and it has all this other shit to it. So I've seen COD players, Muffin, um, literally bounce off of I only play COD to I only play Street Fighter 6 right now. And a
Right.
little anecdotal, but I know it's more than just just my inner circle, where it's like they're kind of like, hey, this works, and this is done well, and this is good, and I'm bouncing to this rather than the constantly imploding Call of Duty Warzone.
I Funny enough, I think the battle hub is maybe the thing that opened the gate for COD players, like especially
Mm.
that like location where you can sort of show off a little bit, talk trash a little bit. Because I
Mhm.
think trash talk is maybe the most attractive thing about COD. It's got to be one of the most attractive things about COD.
Like the only thing that's sort of like the last thing was the death comms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
There was only one other shooter that I ever felt had more trash talk, and it was Gears of War.
oh
Like
my
in
god.
Gears 1, 2, and 3, like that heyday, like the amount of trash talk that would happen in the lobby between rounds, fucking epic. I mean, just insane. Um, I the only other place I can think of is fighting games for like that level of trash talk. Like,
Do you
I
remember
mean,
well, I remember there
God
would
has more racism, unfortunately.
between rounds, Call of Duty had that where like
Yeah.
you could hear both teams in the pre-lobby or the like, like just the scoreboard
Yeah,
showing between
before
rounds.
chat came out. Yeah, before like the party chat.
Yeah, which
Oh yeah.
why I didn't play COD, but like every so often, if you were so you and our whole group, you guys are some toxic motherfuckers.
Oh yeah.
Because you would literally like drop out a party chat, just like you. If we had an exceptionally good game, you would drop out of chat. You and fucking Tony especially, to just
Yeah, me,
literally just
DJ Phil.
talk
Yes.
shit real hard at the other team between rounds at the when you could, just to like fucking either to rub it in or whatever.
Hell yeah. What I
And
was
then
but
jump
the
back
thing
into
is
party
people were
chat.
sending me like voice messages on 360 talking trash, so I just hop out and talk trash to them in real time. Like, I'm not gonna send you an email. I'm not gonna best wishes your ass. We're just gonna get it. And the other thing is, like, when you're in that, like, especially for like COD 4 and stuff like that, I was in that age range where like trash talk is like meaningful. I was in that like early 20s, late teens,
It's
where
never
like
meaningful. Learn from his mistakes, chat.
no, it
Or
is.
Ruth.
When you're a teenager, everything's absolute because you haven't seen enough life to like have any real nuanced opinion about things. You just like you heard it one time and you're like, yes, that's true. That's the way the world is. It's like I learned it in social studies. This is the truth. And so it's easy to just like get into huge trash. You could say the meanest, vilest shit to somebody because it just head empty. You don't even think about like oh, that guy has kids or like that never comes into your head. Now I'm 34 and like if I say something real like the other day I was just going back and forth with Mike Wesker, for those of you that watched Assist Me, talking shit, and like we were literally just talking shit to each other, and then I said like the meanest fucking thing, and it stopped the whole conversation. It's like, God damn, dude. And I was like, no, you're right. That was too much. Let's dial up. Let's bring it back in. That wasn't kind stuff. So yeah, no, I mean, I think fighting games definitely attracts all
Oh,
the
it brings out
toxic.
the worst in people.
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid going to arcades
I-
and shit, like the Mortal Kombat cabinet, like people would get into literal scuffles
Oh
over shit.
yeah. Oh yeah. We have to tell people all the time, like, no, fights broke out in arcades, guys.
Yeah, stop that. Like it wasn't like like bar brawls or something like that. But
No.
if you're unfortunate enough to have not been able to go to arcades during the heyday of arcades, and I know this makes me sound old as shit, but like they put the fighting games in one section of the arcade in almost every arcade that I had ever been in,
Mhm.
purely because the amount of trash talk and rowdiness. The only other arcade machine that I saw that would get sectioned off like that was DDR. And
That's for smell.
DDR, well, it was also because of all the stomping, but also people trash talked at DDR like crazy. Like there was an insane amount of trash talk at DDR. Um, like one guy had to split. Like it was a really busy time, so he couldn't do the double pad thing. Like
Mm.
the amount of trash talk DDR got, and you're just like, dude, you're in Jinko jeans stomping. Like, calm down. You can't be that mad about it.
Yeah,
You're wearing
God,
parachute
I
pants.
saw some kid wearing that the other day and I was upset. I was like,
Yeah, it's
fuck,
having a comeback.
don't bring this shit. There's so much shit we don't need to bring back.
Look, it's having a comeback, and it sort of blows me away because when I was a kid and wearing super baggy pants and a tight t-shirt, and I thought I looked really cool. And then now I see pictures of myself and I'm like, God, I look so fucking dumb. But then you'll see like a teenager skating wearing like jeans that are all shredded down by his feet because they're like 4 inches too long.
Too
So they're
long,
just
yeah.
like shredded and shit. And their parachute pants and like it's 100 degrees, literally today, 100 degrees out. You're wearing like these
Mhm.
big ass Jinkos with like a fucking wallet chain just in case your wallet falls out of your pocket. You're wearing a beanie in 100-degree weather. All right, we smell our own. I was that asshole at one point, but like I don't know. It's like I hit adulthood and was like, I gotta things have to make sense now. I feel old as shit. I think anybody young listening to this is just like this old motherfucker was boomer as hell. I'll have you know I'm a millennial. I'm still hip. God damn it! I swear.
How do you do, fellow students?
I tip my hat. Yeah, no, so one thing that I think is going to happen in terms of like falling off a cliff, right? I think multiplayer really started heating up in 2007, where like every game that came out, no matter what type of
Mhm.
game it was, had a multiplayer mode. That's why like games
Yeah.
like Last of Us had a multiplayer mode, although
Yes.
that's supposed to be good. But whatever, like in a million fucking years, why did you play Last of Us and go, you know what? I wish this had a multiplayer.
Steve
Um,
will.
yeah, yeah. He loves playing a multiplayer for a game that doesn't need a multiplayer. I think in 2007 it kicked off this craze. But I think by like 2015, 2016, that craze started to die out where people just wanted a good experience, like a good AAA experience. And that's that rise of like AAA story games, like single player. Like I
Right.
think that's
Right.
where our blockbuster game experience
Mhm.
started. And now we're seeing the peak of that where like it overlapped in like what 2018 is when PUBG really started to become maybe 2019.
Yeah, something. Well, no, even earlier than that, honestly. Maybe even all the way back as far as 2016, honestly.
Well, so you had this like concurrent live services thing that really because microtransactions and DLC sort of were born out of that same desire of wanting continuous money to come
Right.
in, and like microtransactions and live services are sort of hand in hand, right? Like one
Yeah.
can't really exist without the other.
Yeah, I mean, one is basically that. Like, and I don't, it's a really good question of like, where did this really start? Who started the idea of like make a sort of large scale project free, and then just everything is built off of microtransactions. Like, there's no buy-in. Like mobile gaming's been doing it forever, right? But I mean, like a large scale project, like a PUBG, like a Genshin Impact, like
Probably a Korean company.
probably, or Korean,
Uh,
Chinese,
m-
somewhere
I've,
mainland Asia.
the more that I've learned, I've actually like about trends in gaming.
Mhm.
Um, the more I've seen that like Korean companies, especially when it comes to multiplayer and MMOs and stuff, apparently are usually 2 to 3 years ahead of everyone else
Yeah.
in terms of like what's going to be the industry trend. But they also apparently move on from those trends faster too.
Mhm.
Is my understanding of it. So it's probably and PUBG was developed by a Korean developer, wasn't
Yes.
it? Like, so
Mhm.
it makes sort of sense that everything went that way, where every battle
Yeah.
royale was, what was the first battle royale? Was it DayZ or was it PUBG?
I think arguably Daisy, I guess. I don't know.
Because it was born out of Arma 3.
Right, correct.
It
I
was a mod.
from what I understand. I just don't know the full history of battle royales entirely. I know PUBG was the one that started really making waves, like real
Right.
waves, like really was breaking out. And then Fortnite immediately came in and stole its lunch because Fortnite was not that. Fortnite was a tower defense game originally.
Hmm.
It still has it. It's still there. Like one person I know in the world plays it. Probably the only person left in the world who plays Save the World. Um, but but yeah, like Fortnite just decided to came in, really pivoted hard, and then stole its lunch real hard. And I think they did it because it had like the epic money and talent behind it where they're like, hey, we can make this look good because PUBG looked like butt.
Well, that and
Especially
PUBG was trying to go for this realism
because
effect, and like Fortnite was all like,
I
"Hey, kids
remember
can play this
I
too."
remember when both of those games were just starting to take off, and I remember I had this conversation with Max where it's like, I don't really want to play either of these, but if I had to choose one, I'd probably go with the one that looks like Fortnite, that has an art style, has color, it looks a little more has a little bit more going for it visually. So
I played a lot of PUBG. I didn't play a lot of Fortnite, but I played a lot of PUBG. And even when I started to get comfortable with it, because I'm not a really good keyboard mouse player, and for the
mhm,
longest time they didn't accept controller at all. But a lot of PUBG just like felt clanky, even at the
mhm,
best of times. I don't know if it is
yeah.
still now. And like there's a lot of people that swear by it. I have a couple buddies that still play it and are high level players at it, but um it felt very clanky and like unpolished. And even granted, it felt like a mod of an existing game because it was,
Mm. It's
but
a lot
like
like Dota in that way, where like League of
right.
Legends was born from Dota, which was born from Warcraft 3, a mod of Warcraft 3's multiplayer.
Yeah.
And that's how MOBAs were kind of created.
Yeah, and I MOBAs are still to this day one of the ones that I never saw coming. Like I never like it truly
The
shocked
thing is,
me.
I had a friend who was really into Blizzard multiplayer games, Warcraft 2
Mhm.
back in the day, and he was excited for Warcraft 3. And then I remember it's so funny because I don't know if anyone fucking remembers this. Like here's the thing, if you were a PC nerd back in the 90s, you might remember how originally Warcraft 3 was supposed to be this game done in like third person, and you were going to focus on the hero commander of your unit. And then after all these delays, it got switched back to a more traditional overhead style.
Mhm.
And people were there was like this sort of there's a little bit of like not controversy, but there's a little bit of pushback where people are like, well, I thought you were going for this crazy thing. And it's weird because that's kind of what happened with MOBAs, where
Right.
maybe not necessarily third person, though Smite exists, but like it was like the whole idea of like you control a hero character unit, whatever, and they kind of pulled back a little bit on that, when they got to release of Warcraft 3. And then what happened? Modders went back in and basically like took sort of the original vision that was hyped up in PC Gamer magazine,
Yeah, I was gonna say
and
PC
then
Gamer is the one.
exactly PC Gamer magazine, and then like kind of like and then MOBAs blew up. So it was kind of like this weird thing where it was like I remember the hype for this genre shift in Warcraft that was supposed to happen, and then kind of like got all it did was get delayed. Ended up because MOBAs eventually came in. Were like, here's basically came in and blew it the fuck up, right? So it's almost fascinating to me how like Blizzard literally created it, got cold feet, and then it kind of came like not that Blizzard doesn't it hasn't been successful still, but it's kind of like boy, you could have had they could have had League of Legends before League of Legends to themselves.
Well, totally new ideas often cause, especially money men, like money people,
Mhm.
totally new ideas cause cold feet. It's
Yeah.
really hard to sell. Uh, God, what's that like? Four types of people, and one of them's like the planners, uh, the guy that executes, the guy that
Mhm.
goes along with it, like a support person, and then the person who like just comes up with ideas. Right?
Yeah.
They're not good at rigid structure, but they're really great at pumping out ideas. Uh, Everybody agrees that those guys that are really good at pumping out ideas are great, but they need that fucking planner, and the planner always gets cold feet at a truly new idea, because how do you plan for a truly new idea?
No idea.
um and I sort of wonder, because RTSs were sort of peaking in that like late 90s early 2000s. Like
Mhm.
there was nowhere for them to go, but they sort of were the epitome of competitive PC play in a way. Like
Yeah. Well,
people
StarCraft.
were
Do you remember
oh
StarCraft?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. But like clicks per minute, like there were whole there you get it now too with shooters, but like there were mice that were sold on how many clicks per minute you could max out on, and how many clicks per minute, and how many presses on a keyboard. That's why you had to get mechanical keyboards, because they could take more clicks and faster,
Mhm.
time. That was all built for RTSs at one point in time, but they sort of topped out and there was nowhere for them to go. And so like it makes sense to me that someone like Warcraft 3 was like, "Oh, we're going to reinvent for this audience. RTS audience, of course, is going to love MOBAs. Same idea, clicks per minute, and how fast can you outmaneuver the other person? Like, how fast can you go through the chain of hotkeys is the wrong idea, but like the command chain is the correct term. How fast can you go through your command chain, and can you do it faster than the other guy? And it's like, oh, the natural progression of that. Now that MOBAs exist, you're like, absolutely, MOBAs, duh. Of course, people who
Yeah.
loved RTSs were going to move into MOBAs. But like at the
But
time,
here's the thing though. Moving back up to today, we have so many MOBAs.
right,
Like nobody's really,
saturated.
you don't really, and you don't hear a ton about a brand new MOBA coming out because that's stupid as well. So it's like we're in this really weird state now where it feels like people trying to make a big single player thing with a third party publisher is almost, a death wish, because you're basically like, oh, if your shit it doesn't fucking hit immediately, goodbye studio.
Right.
And if you make the problem now is like, oh, so what do we do? Do we make a MOBA? Do we make a live service? Do we make it's like, well, there's a billion of those out, and everyone's kind of settled into their thing.
So my argument is actually that one, people get into making games for a lot of reasons, but I would say that it comes down to some single player game, some experience sold them on games when they were a kid.
Mhm.
And whatever else they end up making to make money or whatever, like usually a dev dreams, a publisher dreams of making that one good single player experience. And so part of me is like, I don't think it's a death knell at all. I think the only way you can compete is by making a good single player game, because yeah, okay, you're not going to make a MOBA that competes with the big name MOBAs right now,
Mhm.
probably not. But even a mid-budget, and maybe that's, I just want mid-budget shit in general to come back, but even a mid-budget single player game could compete with a big
Yeah.
name single player game if it's good.
I think that's probably where like a lot of, like, in this weird sort of way, because like mid budget doesn't exist anymore in gaming.
In anything.
Like remember Freedom Fighters from
Right.
EA for
Hell
GameCube?
yeah.
That kind of game doesn't exist anymore, and maybe it
Right.
should, because a game like that comes out at $50 even, and it's just about, but like modern day graphics, obviously, and quality, but it's not long, it's not huge, doesn't have any crazy battle pass or anything, just a decent time, but didn't cost an arm and a leg to build. Because
Right.
that's the other, and I think that's the other problem here too, is that going back to like BioWare's Dragon Age Dreadwolf, that's probably got hundreds of people working on the project. And I have to sit there and ask myself, really, like, do we really need to be making a game that's going to require this many people? It's going to needs to be this big, needs to be this expansive, blah blah blah. Couldn't we maybe just give a decent experience at a lower price that maybe isn't
And
some
that's what I'm getting
massive
at.
fucking thing that banks the whole fucking studio on it?
That's what I'm getting at is probably the solution for your third party debt, like the mid-budget single player experience. I Hell, even a mid-budget multiplayer experience can be like, mid-budget is sort of where third party should be
Mhm.
killing it. Tentpole everything, tentpole movies, tentpole games, all that stuff is eventually going to peter out and it's going to fracture,
Yeah.
because you have to have a monopoly on, the production of games or of movies in order to make tent poles work, and then you have to make $1 billion because you spent $1 billion goddamn dollars to
Okay.
make
Do,
it.
do you remember the Ubisoft Connect this year, or whatever the fuck they call it? Their
I don't
E3
yeah
showing.
I don't remember what it was called, but yes, I
Do
do.
you what game probably do you remember the most and is most excited from that Ubisoft Forward or whatever it was called?
Prince of Persia would be an easy one to
Thank
pick
you.
out. Yeah, it's and
Thank
it's
you.
mid-budget.
Yeah, it's the 2D Prince of Persia action game.
Right.
Although there was some kickback from some people like, why is it such a big? Where's my remake? Which that actually blew my mind. We talked about that before, but like that was kind of like the standout darling for us and a lot of people, was the small 2D actions packed like Metroidvania Prince of Persia game. Ah, that sounds fucking awesome.
Yeah, I think there's a huge market for the mid-budget game, um, mostly because that's where you can pack in style. You're not going for photorealism because you don't have the money to compete with photorealism,
Yeah.
with the big studios necessarily. Um, but you can do a really good art style. It's not as much as people will hate hearing this said, it's not super expensive to get orchestrated music for a game. That's not, if it's a 5, 6, 7, even a 10-hour game, you could have really fantastic music in a mid-budget game. Like, you don't have to do synth. Nothing wrong with synth. John Carpenter, hey, what's going on? But like, you can pack all of your style and your music and a good solid story. Doesn't have to lead into a million, you know, sequels and stuff. Look at what is it? Immortals Rising?
Uh,
Phoenix Rising Immortal? What
yeah,
was
the one that just had its sequel canceled. Yeah.
Yeah, the one that just had its sequel canceled. But the first one when it came out was a mid-budget game that everybody was sort of shocked that they loved. Like, it
Yeah.
wasn't
Talk about the Greek colorful,
right.
right.
And everybody was all like, "Oh, it's a Zelda clone." Well, fucking Zelda
Sure,
basically
whatever.
dominated a genre.
I don't know why being a Zelda clone is even a bad thing anymore. Like, I wish there
No,
were
it's
more
sort of like when people say
I
Metroidvania like an
it's
insult.
like I wish there were more of this. But yeah, that was the heartbreak because they canceled the sequel to that game, which was going to be Polynesian themed.
Yeah,
And they apparently a little less cartoony, more semi-realistic art style, but um the idea sounded kind of awesome. How like the functions. I'm like, but Ubisoft got cold feet. Why? Because like, well, Ubisoft's not doing hot, and everything has to be Assassin's Creed.
right. Everything has to print money, has to be huge. We need to make billions of dollars on
Yeah,
this.
because it didn't have this
Yeah,
massive IP attached to it. So I want to pose this question for you. Just I don't know where we are time wise, but finishing
we got
out.
like 5-6 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, here's fishing out. Andrew, I'm gonna name a third party company, like a major one, and I'm gonna tell you what game, multiplayer or single player, you would most like to see from them. What would be the most exciting announcement from them? You tell me what it would be.
Mm.
Just sort of like this is just a sort of a thought experiment where I'm saying like I don't think people are as fucking I want I want the next Warzone. I want the next this or whatever. So, just humor me on this one. I say EA Games. What game of EA Games that they own would you be most excited to see? Could be anything of any style. Like, what would be the most exciting EA announcement for you?
It's very funny that you brought up Freedom Fighters because I played the fuck out of that. I bought it used and played the shit out of
Yeah.
it. And I've always sort of wondered why they never went with that alt history,
Mhm.
like more with that alt history world. I think that that's a perfect mid-budget franchise that you could bring back, especially now that Russia's the bad guys again. Like, on the world stage,
Well,
Russia's fucking
yeah, but it would be more unrealistic than ever to think Russia could mount an invasion of the U.S. at this point.
no, but it's alt history where you could like it doesn't have to take place in the US, right? Like,
Right.
it could be fucking anywhere. Like, I would like alt history shoot, but I would like a third person shooter again that's just like a third person story driven shooter would
Mhm.
be I'd be pretty fucking down with that. Um EA is a weird one for me because every time I think about EA, I always think about their sports games and I never really think about their like
What about
their
EA Sports? Big.
Ugh. Ugh.
Wouldn't want SSX to come back or fuck Def Jam? Who knows?
Well, I didn't realize Def Jam was an EA Sports game at
EA
all.
Sports big.
The thing is,
Burnout
Burnout's an EA Sports game too.
big.
What happened to EA Sports? Like, what? They just like pared everything down to just Madden.
Microtransaction hell. Well, EA
Well,
Sports big was the extreme sports brand label. Your
brand of it.
snowboarding, your car racing, your I don't know why Def Jam was because that's just a fighting whatever. Underground fighting.
Yeah. Well, so the thing is like if you're gonna play a sports game, in my mind is like the extreme sports is the fun one to play because I'm definitely not going to do any of those crazy ass jumps on a snowboard.
Mhm.
Like if I could learn to snowboard, I'm not going to be jumping any chasms anytime soon.
Right.
You know?
But you hear EA and you're like, okay, you know what? I'd like Freedom Fighters. I'd like a new Freedom Fighter
Yeah, I
style
could be
game.
down with that. Yeah.
You know, Ubisoft. What would you most like to see from Ubisoft?
No, fuck. I'd like Beyond Good and Evil to come back, but you know,
Maybe
that's
not as a weird multiplayer online create a
I.
character thing.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck that was about. I don't know why they thought that was going to capture the zeitgeist. Something like everybody was like, we really want the story to continue of Beyond Good and Evil.
And here, let me do a prequel and let me do everything that the first game wasn't, but hits all these boxes for multiplayer live
Yeah,
action.
what the fuck? Like, bring me an Orwellian dystopian society where I'm a photojournalist again. What
You
the
want
fuck
an
is
you want
wrong?
an actual Beyond Good and Evil
Yeah,
sequel, right? Understandably. Um, maybe, if I say Crytek, I'm basically making a very pointed thing here.
well,
Because Crytek owns Time Splitters. So
I did. Yeah, well, I would love Time Splitters to come back always. But even if they finally made a new Crisis, isn't that Crytek too?
well, yeah, but EA published it. It was a weird thing where they were publishing their product for that or whatever. Um,
Is Crytek who made or is EA who made Far Cry?
no, it's Ubisoft.
That was Ubisoft. Yeah, that I mean I would love Far Cry to like go back to the original, it's an open world island where you're hunting mercenaries and shit. That'd be a
Mhm.
cool turn of events.
Well, it's kind of what they're doing with Far Cry 6, but it was like that weird Cuban with that one actor whose name I could not pronounce.
Carlo
Yeah,
uh
exactly. Yes, that guy.
Giancarlo Esposito or
Yes.
Esposito. I'm
Yeah.
butchering his name. He's an amazing
Yep,
character
and that's
actor.
why I didn't even
Yeah.
try.
Really do love that guy. Did I guess I stopped paying attention to Far Cry's for a while. But they went down that road of where like everything had to be a blockbuster.
Yeah, everything had to be like super high budget, like high.
Right.
And to me, I'm like, I really wish they would go back to something like Far Cry Primal,
Well that I
the
mean
Ice
you
Age
love that
Primal,
shit.
the
Uh
Ice Age version of Far Cry, where you're just running around with spears and bows and woolly mammoths and shit.
yeah, that was fun. That was really cool. Um I would one thing that I would really love is like Ubisoft has shown that with Assassin's Creed they can make a period piece game.
Hmm.
Um just like they could do a cool period piece game that's open world that doesn't have to be about assassins. You know what I mean? Like
No, no, they can't.
it,
According to them now, they can't. They can't. Everything must be Assassin's Creed.
this is depressing.
But
How
that's
about
the
you?
thing is,
Any?
well, I think they're making the wrong call here. I think doubling down everything into Assassin's Creed is the wrong call because
I think there's
what
serious fatigue with that
I'm
franchise.
far less excited for their 30 Assassin's Creed project. I think there's 9 officially now. And I would have been more excited for an Immortal sequel
Hmm.
in the South Pacific. That sounded way more intriguing to me than Assassin's Creed Moana. But they didn't even do that. They just straight up canceled it.
Yeah.
Um, so the big one now is sort of Embracer Group, which is like, they own the remnants of THQ and IDOS and all those companies. But is there anything from that sort of era, that sort of PS2 to 360 era, from a third party publisher that Embracer now owns, that what would be most exciting for you from that sort of like the giant
Well,
hodgepodge of games?
for me personally, seeing them make a good shooter again that isn't Battlefield or isn't, that is just sort of something new instead of I guess I'm sort of just tired of like franchises necessarily, like IP existing repeating franchises. I'd like to see something sort of new. I think it's one of the reasons why we were we were both excited about Perfect Dark. Is like yes, it's a franchise, but like Perfect Dark gameplay was different enough to kind of be its own thing. I don't know specifically about everything Embracer Group owns, to be honest. Um,
They own
They
so
own
many.
so much. Yeah, they own like
Yeah.
everything.
My thing
Crystal
is that
Dynamics. I mean, would
yeah,
love.
they own Crystal Dynamics. Yes.
Oh yeah, Crystal Dynamics did the newest version of Tomb Raider, which I actually that Tomb Raider, uh,
Mhm.
like that. I guess it was like an Uncharted rip. It was kind
Here's
of an Uncharted
here's
Assassin's Creed rip. But I actually liked that version of Tomb Raider. I would have been down. I'd be down with more like that.
I personally am of the opinion that I would really like, because they own it, I would like Embracer to make an honest to God true Darksiders 4. I don't really like the fact I actually lost all interest when I heard Darksiders 3 went more Souls inspiration, because the first game was clearly Zelda inspiration.
Mhm.
Darksiders 2 was like Zelda meets Devil May Cry inspiration. Darksiders 3 was more Soulsborne inspiration. I'm like, nope, out completely. Sorry, Gunfire Games, just lost interest 100% when I heard Souls. This was the main inspiration for 3. I want them to do a Darksiders 4. I wanted to like wrap up that story. I'm not like, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't get wrapped up or whatever for me. I'm not like hanging, on the edge, on my fingernails, like, oh, please finish it, whatever. But no, it's just one of those things where I'm like, the most excited I could be by anything Embracer owns, which is like Deep Silver, THQ Nordic, a
Right.
million other companies.
Fucking
Um,
IDOS Montreal.
yeah, just to give me a big Zelda maybe Devil May Cry again Darksiders, big Darksiders 4. Hell, make it multiplayer even, where you can play as all 4 horsemen.
I could do with more
Um,
Deus Ex. Like Deus Ex is IDOS.
right.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. And Embracer has them now too. Like,
they really do kind of own everything. Holy shit.
well, they own pretty much everything you can think of that's not owned by EA and Ubisoft and any of the Japanese companies. And I love Japan kind of out of this conversation entirely, because strangely enough, Japan is weirdly kind of just getting by doing mostly what we want for the most part, where it's like Capcom is not like, Capcom has Battle Pass, and don't get me started, $15 turtle costume DLC is insane for Street
Right.
Fighter 6. It's
Yeah.
absolute insanity. I'm not gonna like
But
person
they
that,
don't base
but
the success of their entire franchise entirely off of that.
and that has nothing to do with like really much with the game itself. That is a costume to run around in the battle hub or single player with. It's generally not like, oh, like this is a loadout that's going to be really good in
OP,
Warzone, and
yeah.
you need to put that $20 in, jackass. But like, like Street Fighter is doing really well. Resident Evil 4, we've never even heard of DLC for Street Fighter 4, really.
Mhm.
Or I'm not sorry, Street Fighter 4, Resident Evil 4.
Yeah,
God, I'm
I
mixing them.
got you. Yeah.
You get me? Where it's like, I think they had like some update or whatever, like a couple weeks after that game's gone completely silent. We all kind of assumed there was gonna, but whatever. Even if it is, it's gonna be like, it'll be like all the other DLC where there's like one big DLC campaign thing later on, right? Like, I don't feel like we're getting like shafted when it's like, okay, here's Resident Evil 4. There'll probably be some DLC in a year. Cool. Same with 8, same with 7, same with 2, kind of thing, right?
Right.
Actually, I don't even think 2 got even that much, but um so they're doing their thing. Square Enix, it's funny. Square Enix has all kinds of scummy shit going on all the time, in their mobile division, and they tried last year. Don't get me, they tried,
They did
and
try. Yeah.
they got burned so fucking hard with Babylon's Fall and Chocobo GP that it was kind of like, I still think Square is still the scumball company that would do it if they could get away with it, but they fired their fucking NFT crazy CEO, over it and all his machinations. So
Hey, NFTs were the future.
this man was convinced of it even after they melted.
This
But
is
yeah,
Tuesday, August 29th, just a year later, and nobody's talking about NFTs anymore.
no.
It's
But
just
yeah,
us.
I did kind of leave. Don't get me wrong. I think I can have whole discussions as to the scumminess of the practices of Square Enix and Namco and hell Capcom with those turtle costumes and fuck's sake of Jesus Christ. But like, for the most part, they're not having the issues that the Western publishers are having, where they don't want to do single player games unless there's a bunch of transactions and a year-long battle passes like Assassin's Creed. We have to like treat it like a live service, have a bunch of content update people pay for in our Assassin's Creed games. And I'm like, I don't think that's working, Ubisoft. Like, people really getting burned. Like shit, Odyssey and Valhalla were big enough. I didn't need to keep coming back for more shit. It's like,
Right. Just
you,
sell me the ultimate edition.
yeah, you
Fuck
stuffed
off.
you stuffed the turkey hard enough. You didn't need to keep throwing shit on top of it. So they're having their own problems, but yeah, like the problem we have now is that they don't want to fund a single player game that they can just sell on its own and just let the game be its own thing. And they don't want and they're too stupid to realize that they themselves have saturated the market with multiplayer offerings to the point that it's like you don't need to offer any more multiplayer. We're good.
And that's what always happens. Like it'll saturate and then it'll go away for a few years. And in like 5 or 6 years, people will be like, oh, I wonder what happened to that. And then one person will come out with something good and then it'll fucking spike up. It's why I think like,
Yeah, here's what's gonna happen. An indie's gonna fucking kill it with something,
right.
or even a first party, because that's Nintendo or Sony or whoever. They're gonna come out. They're gonna kill it with some first party offering, or an indie's gonna come out and kill it, and then that's literally gonna dictate the next 5 to 10 years of what
Right.
all these the remaining big third party publishers are basically gonna chase this fucking trend to death.
It happens every time. I don't know why I even get bothered by it anymore, but it is something that, like, how many good ideas have been turned down in the last few years just because executives are going to be chasing a trend?
Yeah,
You said it earlier where it's like chasing that dragon, just like
yeah,
cocaine. It's like that's what they're doing. They're doing cocaine and chasing the dragon of money out the door.
yeah. That's what they're doing. And I guess Kevin Smith once famously said, "Don't go to where the puck is. Go to where the puck is going."
To me, yeah. On that note, we have producers to thank. If you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week was Kyle I. Thank you, Kyle. And our producers for this episode are Mutton Chops Johnson, The Pink Hammer, Schmidt1, Tsunami, Croy35, Hyper Viper 89, Ziggy Z, and Online Persona. Thank you, dudes. And we'll catch you next time.
Later, dudes.